G'day legends, Deano from Deano Builds here, and today we're going to check out how I built this absolute banger of an outdoor kitchen with native Australian hardwoods on a budget. Let's get stuck into it. We're going to use as many reclaimed materials and as many offcuts as we physically can on this project, and you know what? If you haven't built an outdoor kitchen, that's okay, because I've never built an outdoor kitchen either. Let's figure it out together. Feeling pretty pumped about this project. This is something I've been wanting to build for quite a while, and if you know me and you watch my videos, you know a lot rattles around in my head, so it's nice to get this one out and into a physical form. Getting out of the workshop and into the elements is also a bonus too, so let's load up some tools and get stuck into it. This kitchen's going to be L-shaped, and I'm going to try and keep the construction side of it as simple as possible. So first thing I need to do is build a frame, and to do that I've just got some of these 70 by 35mm pressure treated pieces of pine. I'm just going to dock a bunch up, going to cut some top and bottom rails and a bunch of studs to go in between and screw it together and screw it to the wall. Now, the reason I'm using treated pine here is we have a real issue with termites here in the southwest of Australia, and pine is one of their favourite foods, but they don't eat this stuff, so it's the perfect material to use. I've just gone through and marked all the locations of the studs and top and bottom rails just to get their alignment perfect. I'm also going to pre-drill all my holes so I don't have to worry about any splitting, and I'm just going to sink in some 65mm galvanised screws. The reason I've chosen galvanised screws is we only live a couple of kilometres from the ocean, so this will just prevent any rusting. So while I'm putting this frame together, I'm being mindful that the slab that it's going to sit on isn't actually level because it's got fall to allow for any water runoff. So I'm just going to put a little block of wood under one end just to level it off. And once I've got that sorted out, I'm just going to screw it to the wall, and that'll give me a good solid base to build the rest of the frame off. And speaking of the rest of the frame, I'm just going to dock some more bits up and screw it together the exact same way I did the first panel. Now, I haven't 100% locked in where every piece of the kitchen, sink, grill, etc. is going to go within the footprint of the actual kitchen. I've been more concerned about maximizing the size and determining how much space I've actually got to work with. Once I get everything framed up, then I'll start to consider all that. And a lot of you guys might be surprised that I don't actually have a final layout determined for this kitchen, but you don't always have to have every step of the build planned out and locked in concrete. You really can just kind of go in half blind. I know that scares a lot of people, but if you just trust your process and you just think about things as you go, it usually works out pretty good. At least in my case, it does anyway. So to all you perfectionists and procrastinators out there, maybe just give things a go my way. Who knows, you might surprise yourself. Remember guys, if you're feeling even the slightest bit of inspiration by my build, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. One of the great things about building on location rather than building in the workshop and then transporting it later is I get to visualize myself using the space, and I get to sort of tailor the build as it evolves. This allows me to consider the functionality of the kitchen in a way that I wouldn't be able to if I was building it off-site. This also means that as new ideas pop up, I'm able to incorporate them. As an example, as I'm finishing off this frame, I'm picturing myself cooking in the kitchen and washing dishes and using the space and thinking about how I'm going to use this space when I'm entertaining. And I probably don't want my back to people while I'm cooking, so the grill's definitely going to be front and center. I'm also considering the location of the sink and how I'm going to route the plumbing. I want to keep this as simple as possible, so all I'm going to do is route my plumbing through the wall and connect it to the kitchen plumbing that's on the other side of the wall. So now the frame's done and everything's painted and I've locked in the location for everything, I'm just going to go ahead and cut my kitchen countertops. These slabs are red tingle, which is a native hardwood that grows here in Western Australia. And I've been lucky enough to inherit these from one of my neighbours. These actually came out of his kitchen and now they're going into my kitchen. They were actually milled by him on his own property about 25 years ago, so I mean, things don't get much more local than that. It's also worth mentioning that a lot of the pine I've used for the frame has just been offcuts that have been too awkward to use for anything else, so it's really nice to use them up. Using reclaimed materials is something that's really close to my heart. It's not just good for the environment, but it's also really good for your hip pocket too. I also feel like in this consumeristic world that the quality of materials has really deteriorated over the years, so using reclaimed things that have been around for a long time really gives an opportunity to put some quality into your builds. For example, I would never be able to buy slabs like this in a hardware store. So now that I've got my slabs biscuit joined and glued together and all screwed in place, I'm just going to mill up this piece of Jarrah to use as a backsplash, and I think it's going to complement the red tingle slabs really nicely. But before I install this backsplash, I need to get rid of this god-awful varnish that's on these slabs. And you can really see all that sanding was worth the effort because this timber has the most beautiful grain. Whilst my philosophy of building on the fly and winging it works out most of the time, this is not one of those times. I probably shouldn't have put a couple of these screws in, but you'll see why in a second. Hot tip for everyone here, don't run your brand new track saw through screws. It's not good for it. We live and learn, and luckily I caught it pretty early and I didn't actually cut all the way through the screws, so I think we're okay. So I'll soldier on and continue cutting out this opening for my sink. I'm pretty stoked about the deal I got on this sink. I picked up a big laundry trough for $10 at my local tip shop. Places like salvage yards and tip shops and demolition yards are really good ways to save a few dollars and to pick up something and give something new life that would normally go into landfill. Now it's time to install the grill, and I was originally going to do what I did with the sink and cut out a notch and recess it into the countertop. I went inside and got my wife and said, come and throw your eye on this and tell me where you think the grill should go. I showed her what my plan was and she had the most genius idea and said, why don't you make the grill so it retracts out from under the counter and we still have all the counter space? And honestly, I cannot believe I didn't think of this, but it worked out so well. So to make that happen, I just chopped up some more of this termite-proof timber, screwed it together, and this is what I made. Random question time. While I've been working with this treated pine that's anti-termite, I've been thinking, do termites have names? And if they do, what would they be? Something like Clint Eats Wood, or Niles Barkley, or Chewbacca? I don't know. If you guys think of any more, drop me a comment and let me know. Now that I've got the frames put together and I've completed my 3.5 hour round trip to get draw slides because I live in the middle of nowhere, I'm just going to chuck in a couple of extra studs here and screw everything in place. And this just goes to prove that you don't always need a concrete plan when it comes to building, and sometimes the best things just happen on the fly. And whilst we're building things on the fly, whilst I'm under here mounting this slide out, I'm having the realization that a shelf and a drawer for utensils would be really helpful. I'm also starting to think about what I'm going to do to wrap the outside of this, and I know I want to incorporate some Jarrah and I know I want it to be decorative, but we'll let that marinate in my brain for a little while and get back to the build. So I'm going to get my shelf done, and all I've done is made up a couple more of these angle brackets, screwed them to the studs. I'll slap a bit of black paint on them and I'll just go ahead, level everything off and screw a piece of laminated ply to the top. Nothing fancy, but it serves its purpose. And for the drawer, I'm just going to mount the drawer slides, and then I'll be able to get an exact measurement for the size of the drawer, rip down a heap of ply, screw it together, mount it to the drawer slides, and we're done. And to position the face panel on the drawer, I just use these handy little clamps that allow you to do just that. Highly recommend getting some if you're ever doing drawers. And now it's time to hook up the plumbing. This is what I used, but I am not a licensed plumber, so we'll just pretend that never happened. And nor am I a builder, but I'm pretty sure this is how they take exact measurements. Or at least that's what I've seen them do on TV. For the two side panels, I'm just going to use these black laminated ply, and for the front panel, I'm going to do something a bit more ornate. And for anyone who's been frustrated that I didn't move this plant for like 3 days, I finally did, so now I hope you're happy. This black laminated ply that I'm using is usually used for making concrete forms. It has a really high resistance to moisture, so I think it'd be perfect for these two outside panels. And now for what I thought would be the most exciting bit, which actually drove me crazy and took way longer than I thought, building our smoker. But I'll spare you guys the details because this thing came in way more parts than it should have. And I'm glad that's all out of the way, because now it is time to make a masterpiece. And just so we're clear, we are making a Jarrah panel for the front of this kitchen. I've started off by milling a bunch of these Jarrah sticks, and each one's going to get a chamfer on 2 edges. This was super time consuming. It probably took me about, I don't know, maybe 3 to 4 hours to get all this done, but I had some good tunes going on in the headphones and I just sort of got stuck into it. And what was even more time consuming than cutting all the pieces was sticking them on. I had to cut each individual angle, and then I had to go and put a chamfer on that cut, and then I had to glue it down and nail it down, and then I had to rinse and repeat. And I think I actually had about 3 days of solid work in this panel. The length of time that this panel took is the exact reason why I didn't make a decorative panel for all 3 sides. My hope for this panel is that the oil will age and weather and it will soften, it will lose a lot of its sheen, and it will match my bar really, really nicely. In saying that, I don't want it to mirror my bar. My bar's very sort of rustic and very bush and very country, and that's really the vibe that we're going for our whole outdoor space. Was it worth it in the end? I absolutely think it was, but I'll let you be the judge of that. To attach the panel, I'm just going to use these little galvanized L-shaped brackets. I'm just going to screw them to the studs, and then from the back of the panel, I'll be able to screw it in and there'll be no screws visible. I am, however, going to have to pop a couple of screws in on the ends. To overcome that, I'm going to make a couple little L-shaped corner caps and I'll just glue those in place. And that sums up this build, guys. Let's check out the reveal. If you like a kitchen with a view, well, here it is. And we are absolutely ecstatic with how this turned out. We're really happy with the timber that we chose for this project, and we're very blessed to get our hands on such rare and exotic wood. The grain in this red tingle is absolutely mind-blowing, and it complements that Jarrah absolutely amazingly. Really pumped to start entertaining and just really spend a lot of time with our friends and our family and just cook up an absolute storm. As always, legends, thank you so much for the support. If you liked the video, drop me a subscribe, a comment, a like, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.